Hello, everybody. Welcome to Misfit
Hi.
Artists. I'm.
Hello.
It's a new friend. Who's the new
Who
friend?
is this friend?
Hi. I'm Raphdoods, Caroline, to my friends. But I am a digital illustrator and comic artist. Raphdoods is my handle, Raphdoods. I go by that on Instagram, YouTube, Etsy, all that jazz. And I'm here to do art and stuff, you know?
Yes, very good, very good. We were fortunate enough to meet Raphdoods at a couple of art shows, namely Cartoons Crossroads Columbus, where we were little table neighbors. And you were crazy enough that when I said, "Hey, I wanted to do some collaboration stuff with other local artists," you said, "Yes, me too." Here we are. And
Yes.
do you want to explain the collaboration that we landed on, or do you want me to take it over again?
You can give them the spark notes, you know?
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
So basically, what we landed on was we're gonna do 3 art pieces. You'll see one of those today, and we basically did it like you would do a comics pipeline, animation pipeline, how you work in a crew. One of us is sketching each art piece, one of us is lining each art piece, and the other is coloring. And then we're gonna cycle around. So this time around, Miss Raphdoods, I believe you did the sketch. So if you wanna take it away and start telling us about this big beefy boy, or your sketch process at all, or your experience.
Yes, of course. So we decided on the theme of slashers because we all love slashers. Who doesn't?
Mhm.
And I already had a pre-existing slasher that I made. I want to say it was probably a while ago now, like 4 or 5 years. Um, but yeah, that was my initial concept sketch. I kind of went with this like Wolfman theme, like raised in the forest by wolves. So he's got the cool like extremely edgy like muzzle thing on. I gave him a meat tenderizer as his weapon of choice. His name is Brutus. And I made a lot of art of him at the time, or like a decent amount, but I hadn't really revisited him in a while. So I was like, you know what? He's the perfect character to pull out for this. So I just kind of did like a silly sort of action pose that's like more like sexy than it does make sense.
Yes.
Um, but that was like kind of the intention and kind of the vibe because we were talking about,
Mhm.
pinups and all that stuff and um, that kind of like goofy sort of vibe. So I was like, okay, um, here's this shot of him, his, you know, stupid little shirt that's become a crop top for some reason and his cut off pants. Um,
Who
and I
doesn't
love
love
that in
short
that sketch you
shorts
can
and crop
tell
tops?
I did not finish the other hand at that point
I
yet.
was
It
I
was
was
just a
gonna say,
blob.
like, so how much was different, because it's always fun to learn about other people's different art styles and everything. The
Mhm.
most noticeable difference between these 2 stages is, one, you had a red square behind one of them, but really the biggest difference I noticed is just simply that you didn't finish this hand, and then at this part of the sketch you
Yeah.
finished the hand. So what else, like, was the big jumps you made from that stage to the other stage, and what do you think you were rolling with? Because I said those were 2 different iterations that you did. You literally just go back and fix the hand, or like was there other
Yeah, I pretty
substantial
much went back and
changes?
fixed the hand. I liked the red background, but then with for purposes of making it easier for people to like edit on top of, I was like, well, I'll probably remove it so that it's white, so it's easier to make like, into a multiply layer or
Mhm.
whatever, so it's easier to kind of draw on top of or draw under. So I just removed that just for that sake.
Gotcha.
Um, but yeah, I just fixed the hand, because I think I sent that initial one to you guys just to show you like here's what I've got so far, but I was already really close to being done with the sketch at
Okay.
that point. I kind of just did the last like remaining pieces that I had been like leaving off.
Hmm.
Even now, I feel like there are some things about it that I would change, but overall, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah. So is this what you think your normal? Because obviously, unless you are a storyboard or a rough animator, a lot of people don't see your sketches too often unless you're making an effort to show them off. Is this
Right.
your normal sketch style, or do you think you changed very much to give to us? Like, did you draw less detail in your sketches than normal so that we had more freedom, or did you try to be even
Mm.
more clear because, like, oh shit, someone's actually gonna see this?
Right, that's a good question. I would say it's probably roughly like comparable. Something that I do, at least in my process, is um, unless there's like something very specific I'm trying to do with the line art, I often just instead of making an entirely new line art, I'll just clean the sketch.
Mhm.
Um, so a lot of the time I'll do several sketches on top of each other where I do like the extreme like base version, and then I go over top and I do like all of the like detail sketch. A lot of the time, again, because I'm going to just go back and refine it, as opposed to redrawing all of it another time. That's probably why I feel like good enough about adding so much detail to what is like basically a sketch.
Mhm.
But I added the extra um like shading and stuff to kind of make it a little more obvious like what lines were like where,
Yeah.
because a lot of the time I'm working with lines that are all at like various opacities.
Mhm.
um and I was like, it might be confusing to look at if you don't have stuff like blocked out, so I did do that part definitely
Mhm.
to kind of make it a little bit more readable like when I was passing it along, so
Yeah.
there's that.
Like, I mean, it really it has a lot of storyboard board vibes to me. Like between like the very, I'm gonna call it organic, even though we've all agreed this is a very goofy pose.
Yeah.
Um, but like it reads very clearly. Like you like if you slapped a background on this, I could very much see the like it being
Right.
monochrome and everything. It feels a lot like a lot of storyboard artists I've seen, which is very
Yeah.
cool.
Well, and
Um,
I've done like animatics and stuff just in like my own like free time. I haven't like studied storyboards in really any like major capacity, but um I've certainly done like a little bit of that. So I feel like it does sometimes like translate into my illustration work every once in a while, especially when I'm doing something like this that's more like there's more like movement involved, I guess. Yeah.
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 Is there anything else that you want to say about like his backstory or anything, or about your process, what you're trying to, get
Yeah.
out of it,
I
or
don't know. It's his backstory is really pretty like bare bones because the idea was more to like kind of just think of a like an elevator pitch for a slasher sort of. Um so there's not much else to him hypothetically speak like that I have fleshed out right now. Um but yeah, I mean I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I like how his torso turned out especially. I like his stupid crop top. It's very fun.
Yes.
Um yeah. If I
Yes.
had to change anything, I mean, I'd probably mess around more with his mask. I hadn't drawn it in a while, and it was kind of like hard for me to like remember its like scale compared to his face or whatever, but
yeah.
it's still readable. So I was like, you know what, good enough. We'll leave it there.
No, I mean I think the mask worked out really well. I mean, if we go back to your original design, I mean you have some good references pulled up there.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I mean the other thing that you could always look at is obviously like when so we're talking about pinups. All the other ones won't be pinups necessarily, guys. Like
Yeah.
we
Right,
we
right.
actually made it very much a point to have like a really super cartoony one that had a little bit of like that Halloween costume cute vibe, and then one of just like straight up was gonna be scary as fuck. So and
Yeah.
I feel like
Yeah.
you rode the line really well. Like if I saw this guy in a Friday the 13th movie, majority scary until the camera is just looking right up at his crotch. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the intended vibe for sure.
but like I know that there are like those puppy play masks that you can probably find for like if you wanted the reference of a muzzle on a person, that'd probably be
Right.
good to
That's
look
true.
at.
That's true.
So but yeah, no, I liked it a lot. The next part was the line art, which I went ahead and rolled with, which a lot the way I sketch personally lately has been I sketch in black just because I know like the psychology is supposed to be sketch in another color so it doesn't feel as permanent. But like
Mm-hmm.
I just like the color like I just don't like looking at red as I draw it for some reason. I don't know why. So I'll sketch all my stuff in black just so I feel like I'm using a pen, and then I'll just put a color overlay on top of it. So that's exactly what I did for yours. Because that way, like, I just want a different color so I don't mix up my lines for your lines, especially since your sketchy style had like a lot of thick lines, a lot of hatched lines. So I didn't want to think I drew a line, and surprise, surprise, I didn't.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get. I'm not gonna say I wanted to keep the anatomy super right because especially for cartoons and horror stuff, like I think proportion is something very worthwhile to play with, like big hands, giant eyes, like bring focus to things. But I did want to like since he had like literally like a whole pec showing, I wanted to play. I think a lot of musculature vibe is shown in the bicep, shoulder to pec area from for male characters at least. Like if you have that super defined, you have a very intimidating force right away.
Mhm.
Um, but for the most part, I stuck with my classic lining style, which is very often inspired by like Gendy or like certain animes. But I wanted to make sure that I had a lot of thick to thin contrasting lines, especially again as we get into some of the anatomy and everything. Uh,
Right.
and I straightened up. You can actually see on one of the sketches. I simplified a lot of the lines so that you would have again. So both of you, Caroline and Ace, both of you guys are comic artists first and foremost, correct? Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say comic. Well, I kind of flip-flop between comic and illustration, but same
okay,
same vibe, I would say.
but you only dabbled in animation, like you never
That's
took like
correct,
in
yeah.
depth. So for us at least, and I'm always interested to see the overlap in like comic and animators because I know especially like Disney animators, a lot of them started as comic artists and became animators, and I don't know if that's quite the same vibe as it is today. But for animators at least, we always say like if you look back at like Bruce Timm stuff, you want to have a straight line contrasting with angles or curves. Um, and just it goes into like line of action and clearness. So like having that arm raised up and then like having more anatomy and detail shown on the other side. I think it's just a very fun middle ground of I want to simplify this and make my life easier, but also you gotta show some of those sharp angles and everything. So,
Right.
Yeah.
I love
uh,
that.
thank you. I was gonna say, how did it feel? Because again, you're the first one to really be experienced this. How did it feel to have to put so much work into this amazing sketch, and then there were a few phases where I just very much said, I'm doing nothing about that. I'm doing something completely different.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like to each their own, sort of. So, I think it is really interesting to see how different artists kind of take the same image and roll with it. So, I did like seeing it. I think it's interesting to see how different people's minds work with this kind of stuff. Definitely.
Yeah, good, because there was definitely a part of me that's like, okay, obviously we're all putting our spin on it,
Yeah.
so I want to be respectful, but also I want to do my thing. And
Yeah.
I was kind of waiting like there's like a 2% possibility that she's gonna be a little pissed at me. It was a lot of fun to kind of interpret someone else's sketching. And your sketch was very very clear, so there wasn't a whole lot of like brain cells I had to use to figure out what was going on. It was
Mhm.
just simply again thinking about it as like from an illustrator to an animator, like because I always think of things as in if I was gonna make this character move, how would I rock and roll? So again, things like making some of your curves and angles straight, uh, simplifying the zipper a little bit because again, there's no time lapse for it. But basically, what I did was I just made the rectangle to like go around his bulge, magic wand selected, and just zigzagged in there. um, but no, it was a lot of fun to play with the shapes, playing with my spot blacks just to reinforce some of the shape language and to give like just drama basically.
For when I did the coloring, I I don't think anybody was on the same page that we had to use like the reference image. So I went ahead and used the colors.io to select a random color palette and then just base it off of that. Which for me, it's a lot of fun to use a random color palette and just like limit myself to make sure I
Oh
get
yeah.
the best uh, result possible. So I used those colors that were given to me, and then I did color picking like in that same range and just created my palette from there. So after that, I did the shading, which was probably the most satisfaction I got from doing just soft cell shading. And as you can notice, oh no. I turned off the flat color layer just to make sure I get the lighting and direction of shading all together and make sure it looks good before I continued. And then I thought I was done, but then you guys like, what if we made the highlights to make it pop a little more? So I added the warmer tone highlights like a yellow or gold, and finished it off from there. And also a few little blood splatters, because why not?
Yeah.
Yeah, gotta get that in there.
Yeah. And I will say, like, especially like when you do your soft cell shading, like, it, like, shading can be such a, if you do it right, no one really notices it some kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, because I think 100%, like, if we turn that off, it would be just so much more not fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I really appreciate it. And I do think that little, because when I think of highlights, I always do like edge light, because again, I'm very crisp, anime style stuff, and like that edge light is always what I think of. But
Yeah.
you kept it soft with your highlights, and it added such a subtle touch of life to it. I especially love the glow in the eye, personally. I think the
The
was
eye
real
glow is very
fun.
good. I do a lot of eye glows in my stuff too. And it kind of, yeah, it just adds like a little extra pizzazz to it, which I do love.
Hell yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I think this was a lot of fun. Loved seeing how we all mashed up. Cannot wait for the next
Yes.
one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and if I'm doing my job right as an editor, then your Instagram and anything else that you want plugged should be flying across the screen now.
Woo! You love
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Which so we'll get that list there. It's you have an Instagram, you have a YouTube. Is there anything else that I need to search out to link in the descriptions and all?
Etsy?
Oh yes, you have it.
Etsy, yeah.
Wow, I am a
Yeah, I would
get
say
fired.
Instagram's my big one. YouTube, I kind of update sparingly. I'm hoping to do it more now that like I've switched jobs.
Mhm.
Wasn't really able to do it while I was working in retail hell because it's just too much work.
Mm-hmm.
But YouTube and then Etsy for sure. Yeah, I have a lot of stuff that I put on there. And on my Instagram, that's where I announce all of my like local events that I'm going to. So that's pretty much it.
You guys blow this video up with views so that Raph keeps wanting to collab with us. It's up to
Yes.
you to make like our friendship with her will fully be dependent on how well this video does.
So please, we're begging you. I'm begging you, give us
I want to have
your
a friend.
views.
Okay, yeah. I guess we'll just sign off, and yeah, this was our little Halloween special. But the next two that we'll post in like November, maybe December, are still gonna be Halloween themed because we sketched them all during Halloween. So
Right.
this is us announcing that
Oh, you know
Halloween
it.
is not done yet.
Yes, Halloween will return in Avengers Endgame.
Yes.
But till then, y'all just stay weird, stay spooky, stay creative, and we will see you when we see you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.